Here's our first question from Colin Walsh of the CBI in Northern Ireland.
As you're aware, Northern Ireland is the only region in the UK which has a land border with another EU member state. As such, businesses in Northern Ireland are very interested in the debate in the UK about remaining in membership of the EU or leaving. Where do candidates stand on the question of remaining in the EU or leaving?
Okay. What does
Jim
costing
Martina Anderson,
get out of
right.
it?
Ireland's place is in Europe, north and south. And if it came to such a vote, we would be advocating the people vote to stay in Europe. We're very, very clear. We do not believe it makes social, political or economic sense to have the north of Ireland out of Europe. The difficulties that it would cause for our SMEs, 9 out of 10 export. The funding opportunities we get, CAP for instance, 2.5 billion comes from Europe. The peace funding, European Social Fund, European Regional Development Fund, fisheries, and then the opportunities we get from the competitive programmes.
Okay.
Horizon 2020, people are talking about
Better in than out. Okay, Jim Allister. All right, Martina, very briefly, just if you could answer that about the money going into a black hole.
This constituency is the constituency that all of us as candidates should be concerned about the most. And this constituency would benefit and does benefit the most through our engagement and our involvement in Europe, and this constituency would be the most that would be adversely affected if we were to leave Europe.
All right, clear enough answer. We'll park that for now, and we'll make up the vast proportion of farm income here. And the reform of common agricultural policy means that the way in which that vital support is delivered is changing. The Ulster Farmers Union has this question for the candidates.
Given the importance of single farm payment to Northern Ireland farms and farm families, and bearing in mind that 87% of our revenue is derived from a single farm payment, what will the candidates do to ensure that farmers and farm family businesses will be protected and that the budget coming to Northern Ireland can be protected in the near future?
Diane Dodds, if these farmers
run on this issue,
Martina Anderson, you don't want this long transition period for the changes in the way that the DUP does. You would like it, what overnight, just massive change?
No, what we're saying, we recognise that there does need to be a transition. However, that said, there are thousands of farmers who get below the average single farm payment. And I'm a little bit confused listening to Diane, because earlier on Diane said with regards to an in-out referendum she would go out in a heartbeat. CAP is the sole competency of Europe. The 2.5 billion that we get here, that's European responsibility to deliver that for farmers. If we were to leave the EU, that would not come in here to the north. So I think it's crucially important that we have a fair and equal distribution of the single farm payment. It is an income support model.
Okay, let me bring in Anna Lowe. Move on though to business, and the bane of business is bureaucracy and red tape. We've just heard about bureaucracy affecting farmers. Europe is notorious for it. Roger Pollen of the Federation of Small Businesses gave us this question for the candidates.
There's some sense at last that Westminster and also Stormont are starting to get serious about cutting red tape. And yet it seems to be coming out of Europe relentlessly. Our members constantly say that they're being pounded by regulation on employment and transport and other issues. What do you think you can do to stop this tide?
Anna, what's your answer for Roger? Do you think the bureaucracy is getting worse in Europe? Have you seen, I mean, you haven't been there for that long, but do you see any kind of real commitment to cutting it?
Well, during the time that I have been there, I've heard some fine words coming from the commissioners, particularly with regards to this tranche of EU funding. And they've told us that they're going to make it more simplified and it's going to be more flexible. And I have to say, seeing is believing, because I'm acutely aware of the red tape and the implications of red tape, particularly for SMEs and for funding. But that said, I would also concur with what Anna is saying with regard to some of the regulations come in. And I think for SMEs, if they were to look at the late payment directive, prompt payments for SMEs, and they have embraced that.
Jim Allister, it's not just bureaucracy, it's the gravy. All of our lives, one way or another, have been touched by the EU's multi-billion pound funding programmes. The latest round of investment under the peace funds amounted to more than €300 million pumped into numerous schemes here. The University of Ulster's Pro Vice-Chancellor, Professor Deirdre Heenan, has this question for the candidates.
Given that the EU has agreed to fund another 7-year peace programme, what in your opinion are the priorities for Northern Ireland under this tranche of funding?
Martina Anderson, are we going to have to do more with less? And if so, what should we be doing?
Well, we are going to have to do more with less because I was the only MEP who voted against the cuts, and one of the consequences of those cuts has been that we are going to receive £100 million less of peace funding. So that said, we have to look at what we can do with what's brought here to the north, and it needs to be about stimulating the economy. It needs to be about jobs and growth. So, but we also need to look at the other competitive funding streams that are out there, not just the funding streams that come in here, crucially important, and I have done some work on that, a gateway to EU funding, and tried to ensure that the groups and organisations are familiar with.
You're talking about trying to hook on to funds that we don't currently get anything from?
I'm trying to make groups and organisations and SMEs and universities and others aware of the competitive funding streams that we need a partner for and what's there in Europe. For instance, I mentioned Horizon 2020, 80 billion.
Okay.
So I want to expand our opportunities.
That's where we're going to have to leave the funding debate and indeed the debate with all of you, because at this stage of the programme we are saying thank you and goodbye to these 6 candidates. Alex Atwood from the SDLP, Diane Dodds from the DUP, Jim Nicholson from the UUP, Anna Lowe from Alliance, Jim Allister from the TUV and Martina Anderson from Sinn Féin.